Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Stephen Pamorada. So I'm tasked to spotlight Manila for you guys. When I say Manila, it's basically the city of Manila, the historic section of this metropolis, and the capital city of the Philippines. So let me go through my slide. Again, this is me, and I'm basically an independent heritage consultant, and I own a heritage consultancy firm called the Heritage Collective. I'll speak more about this later in connecting this with what we do in terms of the advocacy of protecting heritage in the city of Manila. All right, so this is the Heritage Collective. Our tagline is projects, ventures, and experiences for the love of Philippine heritage. And these are just some of the activities that we do. At the back end, we typically do some research on heritage matters. We also partner with local communities in terms of empowering them towards how to protect their heritage in their respective communities. But at the front end, we usually introduce some experiences like this. When I say experiences, it becomes tours, it becomes walks or heritage walks that we typically do on weekends. So I'll go through some of these in just a bit. Let me share some of these. Are you familiar with these places? Yes or no? Can I hear from you? Yes? Yeah. And maybe some of you may have not been to these places or maybe have been already, but what I would like to share with you guys is we offer experiences like this. We say tours or heritage walks, such things that are not typically featured in tour packages. Because typically, people, for example, in Manila, they would always go to Intramuros. Can I see a show of hands who have been to Intramuros at least once in their lives? Fort Santiago, San Agustin Church. But you may have not been yet to Tondo, especially if you hear Tondo, there's a different connotation. When I say different, it's usually negative, right? So, and Binondo, maybe you've been to Binondo because of the food trip or the Chinese food destination, but we usually feature here architectural heritage of Binondo, which are usually threatened by demolitions. And I'm speaking in terms of the advocacy that sometimes this is part of the uphill battle in terms of protecting our heritage. It's always demolitions in those areas. At the same time, Lotto Aracera's Heritage Walk, a different place that's not usually, again, covered by tour packages, and yet we are there to feature the architectural heritage and the historical significance of those places. And then, let me show you the pictures. I'm relating it also to the advocacy of heritage preservation. Why? Because in terms of doing tours, you always bring them at the forefront of the issues. Are you familiar with that at the upper left side of this slide? That's the Manila Central Post Office, which was gutted by fire recently. But prior to that being gutted by fire, we always go there for heritage tours. We bring people there and to talk about the postal heritage of the country and talking about the services of the Philippine Postal Corporation. And of course, the no less than the building itself, which is a Manila landmark, the Manila Central Post Office. So these are just some of the participants that we have garnered throughout our heritage walks. Usually we bring them there so that at the forefront, they're aware of the issues in the heritage. We're not yet talking about some other issues on heritage, for example, building of expressways right on top of the Pasig River. Maybe you've heard of that. Maybe in terms of the reclamations on Manila Bay, we're not getting there just yet, but at least some areas in Manila's heritage corridors that can be seen on the ground, and that so that they can also experience it themselves, and at the same time, perhaps they'll be also part of the solution in the long run. So there. By the way, this picture is. Some of them are done. The walks, the heritage tours were done during the height of the pandemic. And yet people are going there, people are attending our tours, some of them around 20 to 30 to 50 at most, ng mga participants. Because sometimes the reason why they do those, join those kinds of tours because it's good for their mental health during the height of the pandemic. But in any case, of course, at the same time, learning more about the heritage of our city. This is me just on the ground doing some tours. This is in Escolta. I'm not sure if you guys are all familiar with Escolta. It's the former business district of Manila, of the Philippines. What BGC is now, that was Escolta before, basically. So we bring people there and feature the architectural heritage, basically the heritage buildings in the area, talking about the history of that place. Yeah. But in terms of, again, the challenges, we've been talking about best practices here in terms of sustainable tourism, right? Even the challenges that surround it. But here, every time we do tours, we always start at this kind of disclaimer. They will be seeing these kinds of realities on the ground. This is not your typical tour wherein you have to see the best of Manila. You have to see the authentic side of Manila, and sometimes it's not the most beautiful of things, not the most fragrant of things, not even the most perhaps traffic friendly of things, but we bring them there at the forefront again to see the reality on the ground when it comes to our heritage districts in Manila. For example, can you perhaps identify what these items represent? Yeah, traffic, what else? Garbage. Maybe I would refer to this as members and stakeholders of the community, the one at the upper right. Because we don't see them as part of the problem, we eventually want to see them as part of the solution. In the poverty line, those people in the poverty line. Those at the bottom part, especially at the bottom right side. Oh, I love to take pictures of heritage buildings around, but there are spaghetti wars. So those are part of the realities that we see on the ground. So we bring them again at the forefront of these issues so that perhaps they would also be part of the advocacy of heritage. For example, this in Binondo. Of course, some of you would go to Binondo for food trips again. But then there are also architecturally significant buildings in the area, part of the heritage of that place. For example, this building is a 1917 building called Hospicio de San Jose building in Binondo. And yet, what we can see here, it's being demolished as we spoke during the tour. So at least the participants will be aware of what is happening on the ground so that maybe in the future, or maybe they have networks, they can also be part of the overall discussion on protecting these heritage sites. And that's the authentic side of the city. We don't cover them away from them. The reality is here, and maybe you want to take a look and perhaps be part of the solution in the long run. Another thing here, we've been doing these kinds of walks even since 2016. Maybe you've heard of Carlos Adrian, one of the famous tour guides in Intramuros. These are the things that we've been doing for the longest time. Doing tours at the same time involving the people who are doing tours or joining those tours in the advocacy of protecting some heritage sites. So this is basically a tour plus sign a petition to save that building. The El Hogar Filipino building, which was built in 1914. Other things that we do, of course, incorporating some typical tour experiences, but giving it a different twist. For example, in Intramuros, maybe some of you have been to the walled city of Intramuros, the historic part of Manila, but then we incorporate things like, why don't we bring guests on a tranvia, which is previously in Manila, there used to be tranvias flying the streets of Manila, but nowadays it's all gone because war happened, basically. But at the same time, why don't those guests also wear some traditional wear so that we can celebrate heritage while riding on a tranvia on a typical site called Intramuros? So that's what we do. This is the Intramuros Filipiniana Tranviaganza. Also this one, which is also happening also by the way tomorrow. Yes, night at the museums. Typically, some museums in the city of Manila that are not usually open at night, but then we encourage some of the museum administrators to open their premises so that just the same as in other countries, we also have the same here in Manila. Like we can visit some museums on an after shift or after work hours. So this is night at the museums. The backside of this is basically encouraging people to go on nighttime so that also the government agencies would also be compelled, having known that some tourists are already coming into Manila at nighttime, maybe they can also respond accordingly that, of course, let's clean the streets because there are tourists at night. So that's one of our somehow passive-aggressive approach in terms of involving also some people in that advocacy, but of course in a fun way. So there, like at the museum. It's happening tomorrow, of course, by the way. We're also designing some other experiences. This is just like very basic, but we're yet to organize this. But maybe you can take a look. This is part of the back end that we do. Doing some research first and maybe introduce some experiences that can be already publicly announced or shared to the people so they can join it. Join those tours. This is the Manila North Cemetery. We're planning to have tours inside the Manila North Cemetery because in there are lots of architecturally significant mausoleums. And the great Filipinos are there in their final resting places in that cemetery. So there. The Heritage Collective, my brand, is also part of an umbrella organization of heritage organizations based in Manila. So we call it the NILAD community. So the ones at the bottom part are some of my friends and stakeholders who are into protection of heritage in Manila. At the same time, they are also tour groups who are also giving Manila a fighting chance or maybe a different side of things in terms of tourism. So you can like them on Facebook and Instagram, NILAD community. By the way, tomorrow is the City of Manila's 452nd foundation anniversary. So tomorrow, if you want to keep coming back to Manila, we're already plugging this out to you guys. Tomorrow, we have different experiences for you guys. There's Quiapo in the morning. By afternoon, there's Intramuros Luneta tour. Again, for tomorrow, by nighttime, we have the night at the museums, and at the same time, by 4 p.m., we have a different look of Luneta. If you guys have been to Luneta, a heritage walk in that area. So we call it Dia de Manila, basically Manila Day. So on that note, my encouragement for everyone is maybe some of you or maybe your friends or clients can walk with us and take a look at what we got in Manila. Usually, Manila has its negative connotation already. Maybe you have issues with the traffic enforcers and all these things every time you go to Manila. We all know that. And I live in the city of Manila. I always experience that every single day. But I hope you give it a chance, and we give you some experiences to also be part of the advocacy of heritage. On that note, maybe despite me being here in BGC, let me say to everyone, mabuhay ang Maynila. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.